Welcome to Teaching Artist Podcast, a show dedicated to discussions of teaching art to kids, making art, and how those things overlap and feed each other. I'm Rebecca Potts, your host, a visual arts teaching artist.
Hi, before we get into this week's conversation with Wynne, I have a few exciting announcements. First, I've been working on more ways to support and highlight teaching artists, and one idea that I'm starting right away is a weekly featured artist opportunity. Featured artists will have their work shared on our social media and website, as well as mentioned here on the podcast. Yay! To apply, head over to teachingartistpodcast.com/opportunities. There, you'll also find links to apply to be a guest on the show and to apply for our open calls through our sister project, Contemporary Art for Young Audiences, which is an online gallery run in collaboration with Maria Coit of Curated for Kids. Maria and I are planning to open a call soon, so join our mailing list and keep an eye out. Our first exhibit there is closing in less than a week. See Where It Takes You offers work for sale with 20% benefiting Amplifier. Sales close September 4th, so head over soon to grab some gorgeous work and support an organization doing amazing work in art education and social justice. The images and videos from the exhibit will remain up, but work will not be for sale after September 4th. Also closing on September 4th is registration for a fun project dreamt up by one of the artists in the exhibit, Dean Bowers. Together While Apart is a collaborative project from a distance. Sign up on our website. There's a link under exhibit at the top, and I'll also include a link in the show notes. And Dean will mail you a kit to create a piece of art with a prepaid mailer to send it back to her. She and I will be hosting a creative hangout on Zoom. When your piece is finished, then you send it back to Dean and she'll put them all together into a final quilt-like piece. This project is open to all ages, so you can request a few kits and create with your kids. We are so excited to spend time together and de-stress a bit. Another much bigger undertaking that I've started planning is community support and critique groups. If you'd like to help us shape these groups or get involved as a founding member, fill out the survey at the bottom of that opportunities page. And last announcement, I promise, I will be hosting a free class on Be Fun, Be Kind on September 9th. I'm excited to share some really fun printmaking techniques with you. We'll be exploring printmaking using supplies most people probably already have at home. I'll walk through 6 ways of making prints. This will be a fun, hands-on art workshop appropriate for all ages. So I invite parents and teachers to join me with or without your kids. I'm excited to share methods that you can replicate with students. And for art teachers, there are so many extensions that you can add to these printmaking techniques. So join me for my live event on Be Fun, Be Kind. I'll add a link to the show notes. Okay, on to this episode with Wynne. Blade shared how he teaches with a focus on process over product and bringing his ways of looking and making into his classrooms. He shifted from teaching at the university level through a summer career shift program and just dove into teaching at the elementary level, primarily 2nd grade, just this year. What a wild first year. Blade is constantly inspired by the work his early elementary students create and talks about the inventiveness of this age level. He also shares some of his favorite lessons so far and how teaching is akin to improv in some ways. Wynne was born in 1980 in Providence, Rhode Island. He received his BFA in painting from Pratt Institute in 2002 and his MFA in painting from Rhode Island School of Design in 2008. His work has recently been exhibited at Shockoe Art Space of Richmond and the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art. His work has appeared in publications such as Journal of the Print World and New American Paintings. He is a recipient of the VMFA Visual Arts Fellowship, a professional award, as well as the Virginia Commission for the Arts Fellowship in Painting. As an educator, he taught 2D design, painting, and drawing for several years in the Foundation Art Department at Virginia Commonwealth University and the Governor's School for the Arts in Norfolk, Virginia. He is currently entering his second year of teaching elementary art in the public school system of Chesapeake, Virginia. So, hello. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm here with Wynne, and I'm very excited to hear about your teaching and your art making. I like to start with just some background, sort of which one came first, being an artist or being a teacher, and how did you come to be both of those things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely someone who grew up drawing, a kind of lifelong artist type of person who I just kind of, I think the more I think about it, I think of it as a kid, you kind of drawing as a kind of escape where you're kind of going into your own world and not as I was planning to become an artist. Most of the time I was just drawing, and then I ended up good at drawing. And then I thought, well, this might be the only way for me to make a living. I'm not really good at anything else. So I went to the art school route. And then you go to art school and you realize, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make a living with the art thing. So I guess let me try the teaching thing a little bit. It doesn't look too hard to, sit around and talk about paintings in a fine art setting. So when I went to grad school, I did some things that would make it, have the ability to teach, thinking, hey, maybe I could go into this teaching thing. And that was some of my first experiences teaching were in grad school. And that was kind of the place where I kind of first realized I really liked teaching. But it was a very different college sort of atmosphere than I'm at the elementary level now.
Yeah. And how did that shift happen?
Well, I've been teaching at the college level, adjunct teaching since like about 2013. So it was like several years, part-time. And I was having trouble breaking into that full-time kind of position. Yeah. And, having kids, getting older and thinking, I've tried this, what if I taught public school or something like that? It seemed like a bit of a far-fetched idea, since I'd never handled a class of, let's say, whole big second grade, first grade classes. I just dealt with college kids where you walk in, and maybe one kid's asleep on the floor, and that's fine. There's no chairs in the room. And then we just talk about paintings for 6 hours, and so I was used to that. So it was a bit of a gamble. I ended up going through this ODU has a program. It's a career switching program where it's an alternate route to licensure. So I did the summer thing last summer. So I took some courses and stuff like that. And so that springboarded me into the elementary teaching. And I've been in a way, surprised to find how much I love it. And really, I feel like I've found my vocation as a teacher, teaching, particularly at the early elementary ages. And it's been great.
Yeah. And you were telling me earlier which grades you're teaching now. Could you?
Yeah, I technically teach first through fifth grade, but for the, as I was saying, I'm split between two schools, and I'm mostly teaching a lot of second grade and a little bit less of the other stuff. So I'm kind of I feel like I'm a little bit more expert in the second grade.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me that you're really focused on one age level.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that happened.
Yeah. How has that been? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if people have a plan behind the scenes, but yeah, for some reason I didn't have to do kindergarten. And so that'll be next year if I'm teaching kindergarten, that will be a whole different challenge.
Yeah.
I've heard some stories of that.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. So
have you found it harder? I guess you haven't taught really in a different setting in terms of elementary teaching. I'm just thinking for myself, teaching the whole range of elementary, it's kind of nice to have that range, but then there does feel like maybe it'd be nice to be able to really focus down. And do you dig into standards a lot? And
one thing that's really nice, if I have like 3 days in a row where it would be like 15 second grade classes, like, it's like day after day, so that you go through them. You have this lesson plan, and then the classes get better and better because you're really nailing down this lesson that you planned, and then you can make adjustments class to class, and then so that's been really good. It's hard. Like, I only have one 5th grade class, so I'll teach that class, and then depending how it went, it's like, well, there goes that assignment. I don't have a test class. Usually, my Monday morning 2nd grade class, they're like unfortunately like the test group, and then like I always change things quite a bit by see how it goes.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing. I'm like, sorry guys that get me first.
Yeah. But yeah.
Do you have any favorite lessons that you've done with them?
Yeah, I keep, something that connects to my art practices. I keep making them essentially make my art. and then I can look at everything and say, this is great. It looks just like my art. Good job, everyone. But seriously, I keep going. A lot of times I go back to this kind of like drawing plants and things like that. So whether it's like I had some like pine branches hanging in the classroom, and it was a way of kind of talking about line, and then we just these kind of, hey, a pine needle is just a line. So if you just draw a line, that's like a perfect drawing of a pine needle right there.
Yeah.
But so I think the ones where there's a lot of kind of experimental drawing things, like I had another assignment where this is kind of like one of the more creative things I've done ever, I think, was I did a test class where it didn't work out at all. I had them trying to draw some sticks and do light and dark. And I had them trying to do like just kind of like a graphite thing and then erase where it was lighter.
Yeah.
Do like a toned graphite paper and then erase to show the light of where the stick is.
Right.
And it wasn't working because like the little 2nd grade hands couldn't erase. And then I did a thing where I know, I'll just give them strips of tape, masking tape, and I'll just have them color half the tape dark graphite color, and then I'll have them put strips of tape down on gray paper. So then it was immediately like a light value for like the light, and then a middle tone, and then like a dark. So that it was immediately a sense of volume, light. So it looked like college work immediately, but it was 2nd grade. So
that's awesome.
So, and I think I like how when I can kind of put things together where the kids are enjoying it, they get it, and it also is kind of like mysteriously, almost adult, and it's like adults can take pleasure in it,
right?
And it's not like just like a usual, maybe like a craft thing where they put glitter on a triangle or does it look like a tree or something. But it was some kind of it kind of reached into some more visual kind of depth.
Yeah, like you're satisfying that adult aesthetic, but still, giving the kids a process that they enjoy and can learn from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tricky balance. Getting, like not wanting to do sort of cookie cutter, like Pinterest projects.
Yeah.
but wanting that aesthetic, that like adult aesthetic.
Yeah, and finding places where the kids can enjoy it because they have their own interests.
Right.
But a lot of times kids really do enjoy having something look kind of real.
Right.
So, and then there's sort of that kind of magic trick of when just simple little like, oh, this thing looks like it's in front of that thing, or that thing looks farther away because it's smaller, or this thing looks like there's a shadow. So simple things like that the kids like.
Yeah, I was just trying to put together a lesson on depth for 2nd grade, like that depth in landscape and all the tricks that can make it look like it's, one thing is further or closer.
Yeah. I did some stuff like that. And I think a lot of my own artwork a lot of times just revolves around those kind of really simple tricks. So maybe it's just bigger with some more paint on a bigger canvas, but basically it's like, like this stick is bigger than that stick, and then this is some light hitting that stick, and there's a shadow, and and it's thrown together a little, kind of there's a kind of more aesthetically, I don't know, I wouldn't want to say complex, but maybe it's just kind of like just kind of more ambitious scale. But I'm often using very kind of simple kind of tricks. I like this kind of simple in my work, kind of like almost more childlike, simple kind of visual pictorial art tricks.
Yeah. And have you been able to continue your work? Do you have a studio at home or out of the home?
I've just sort of moved into a new house.
Okay. Nice.
So I was living with my mother-in-law for something like 10 years. And
wow.
which is another reason to have more of a full-time job and move out.
Right.
But I was working in like a sun porch there, and I've made a lot of work in that. So now I've moved, and I don't have as much space, but I have a bunch of backyard.
Oh, nice.
So I have a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
And trees and things.
Yeah.
which is actually very relevant to me, since I've really been actively getting more and more into growing lots of little trees in pots. And then I kind of hesitate to use the word bonsai, because then you have all these images of, he's doing like Japanese art with trees and they look like tiny trees. But I think I have about something like 100 little trees and like yogurt pots and milk crates, and I have all these little things growing, and I'm sort of keeping them alive. That's like my studio right now.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll wrap a piece of wire around one tree and tell it to grow a different way. And maybe these things are going to kind of become still life. As I look at them more and more, I start seeing some paint. So paint is coming, but so that's like my art studio right now is my backyard.
Yeah, like a garden. Would you see them as like sculptures that you would want to show, or are they more objects that you would paint and then the paintings are the work?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
since I'm so early in the phase of playing with it, they are little aesthetic, like they're ornamental horticulture, you might say. They are these little objects that I look at in an aesthetic way, but then they could also, I could also use them as still life. But the thing about showing them is it's a whole different other world of like, how do you show little trees? They need light. You can't just leave them in a gallery. They have to have a very specific kind of way to show them. And then that's a whole other world of people showing trees that I don't really understand. But so that's something I'm very, in terms of the question of what I'm curious about, I'm very curious. The one thing that's really nice is, if you have a family and you're very busy, it's hard to find a lot of time in the studio. But if your art is little trees, you go out there and you water it, and maybe that was all you did that day, but then it keeps growing while you're away. Yeah. Maybe you just
like doing the work without
plant.
You.
It's always, my work is always growing. It's it's an addictive kind of thing in that way. It's from year to year, surprises keep happening, and then you take it out of the pot, and it's got this whole different root system that you've never seen before, and so that's been very inspiring to me, especially when you don't have time, particularly in this time of the strange time of all this pandemic stuff. It's been a place also of peace for me, and going into that kind of garden place where you can take care of some things. And there's also this sense of like, you look at a little plant and you say, this could really be good in 30 years. So I have a 30-year plan for that little tree. So the future there's a lot of bright future things going on there.
Longevity and thinking into the far off future.
I'm generally not a person that does that. I don't have a lot of like what I'm going to be doing next year or 5 years. But it's funny with these little trees. I'm like, that there's like, it's like they outlive you, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. And they kind of force you to think like that and think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how the worlds of like botanical gardens and museums can cross and like, where that works.
Yeah. You have these botanical gardens around and, I wanted to have I was thinking of a show of invasive species.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of strange, thorny things that no one likes.
Yeah.
That was my more antagonistic art idea. I had a plan for a poison ivy hanging basket, but I probably won't do that.
Watch out.
My plant joke art ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from that.
Do you share any of this stuff with your students? Do you like talk about it with them or show them pictures?
Well, not yet, but I have some very serious plans because it just seems like such a perfect thing. If you had a kind of bonsai tree on a table as a still life, you could have kids draw this little tree.
Yeah.
So they would be doing like a landscape from life, but you're in a classroom, so you don't have to go take them outside, which is very complicated. So, and the other thing is, if you have a deciduous tree, you could take that tree and show them in the summer and like, okay, it's all green, but then you could take it, then it comes back in the fall and say, look, the leaves have changed.
Right.
And you come back in the winter. So you have this whole kind of teaching about life cycles, teaching about biology and the seasons and things like that. Yeah. So that's a kind of, I think, an exciting possibility for I like to bring in things from outside. I know I brought in some sticks I painted white, and I brought in some pine branches, and I was collecting little like wasp nests. I think I'd like to like have the kids have some little like strange nature objects, maybe in like plastic boxes that they can't get to, so they can't touch the weird, but I don't know exactly what the rules are. Sometimes they have rules like don't bring in any dead animals into the school and stuff like that.
Right. Might be frowned upon.
Teaching a magnet, the governor's school, Magnet High School I taught at in Norfolk, a student brought in a whole rotting deer carcass. It was mostly bone, but it smelled like death in the room. And it was like, I think oh yes, the handbook does have a rule that you're not supposed to bring in any dead animals. But that might be too disturbing. You might want to edit that out.
No, I think it's funny that it's even like that rule has to be an actual written rule. It's like this happens often enough that we've got to have it in there.
Yeah, that's more the upper grades where people are trying to like, rock the boat. Yeah.
Thinking about your teaching style, I wanted to ask if you bring in art history into your lessons. Do you share historical artists or contemporary artists? And
yeah, I'm a first year teacher, so everything I'm doing, I'm learning. And I know how to do it more with college, but I'm still figuring out how to do it with like second graders, because their attention span, you have this brief window of sometimes giving a lesson, and then if you spend too long telling them about the history, you can kind of lose stuff. I did have one thing that worked where I think worked well, where I talked about, it was about talking about symbols, and I kind of started with talking about the eagle and the quarter. And so it's like, well, the eagle and the quarter, and then I showed them some images of where did this eagle, if we talked about what the eagle symbolizes, and then I talked about where did this come from, and it comes from the Romans. I showed them like a Roman coin, ancient Roman coin. It has has the head of the emperor on one side and the eagle on the other. And there's kind of like they're kind of like, what is, it's like, that's surprising that it looks just like a quarter. And then what the Romans didn't come up with that. They took the eagle symbol from the Egyptians. And then there's this kind of, it's really more like a falcon, but essentially it's this, Horus has this, this symbol that looks just like a quarter, so that like the legs outstretched. And then so they're looking at this kind of Egyptian art, ancient Roman art, and it's the same symbol, kind of and seeing how it connects.
Yeah. And
then I had them draw their own symbol, like come up. I think the idea was do your own animal, and I had like a list of things they could kind of choose from, symbolizing. Like the idea was, like imagine you are like, like the king or queen of your own empire or country, and you have and this is your coin, and what's on your coin, and if the eagle symbolizes strength and power, then what does your thing symbolize? That kind of thing.
Right.
So then it connected,
and they love that. Like, I'm the king, I'm the queen.
That one worked out pretty well. Sometimes I'll show art, and they're like, I don't like it. But I generally, a lot of times I'm a little heavy on the process. Like, I have this idea of what I want them to do, and then I show them how to do it. And a lot of times it's not too focused on, like, let's say, like, let's do a Matisse, or let's have it look like Matisse. And I'm more focused. So one thing I think about is how, there's this cliche, like, kids are, if you do like abstract art or something, and then someone says, "Oh, what's this?" My kid could do that. My kid. That's the cliche. But and then I think, like, yes, your kid could do it because your kid is an art genius. Because children are natural art geniuses, but you, sir, couldn't do it. Because it's like magically, I don't know how these kids are doing it. But so I think one thing, what I'm trying to make a point is that having kids do stuff, they are the art geniuses that Picasso was inspired by, or all kinds of, or Paul Klee or other artists are inspired by the art of children, because the art of children is inspiring.
Right.
And so a lot of times it's just like giving them a space and giving them certain material ideas, or, like sometimes it's just like about the idea of like a line or light or form, and kind of letting them do their own thing and not being so much about, like copy this artist or do that artist thing, as if that's like putting that person on a pedestal. But there's only a place for that. I don't want to say, but I do. It's something I have to figure out how to do more of in the end.
Yeah. Have you heard at all of teaching for artistic behavior, or looked into that at all?
Is that like a specific thing?
It's like a sort of a teaching like philosophy or teaching method that it sounds like you're kind of doing, and you might be.
I'm gonna check that out.
You might be into that. I mean, it's really, really summed up is there's like what they call a 3-sentence curriculum that's the child is the artist.
Yeah.
The classroom is our studio. And then what do artists do?
Oh, that sounds good.
So your role is sort of facilitating them figuring out, well, what does an artist do? And like, what behaviors does an artist have? How do if I have an idea, like what can I do with that idea?
Yeah.
So just sort of facilitating them learning the entire artistic process.
Yeah.
Which includes, can include a ton of structure and giving them like demos in specific materials and media and, showing specific techniques, but then giving them a lot of freedom in terms of what they do with those materials and techniques.
That sounds like that's my philosophy.
Yeah.
I should say that. That's a good thing. I'll drop that.
Yeah,
in the future.
there's some great books that can help with like how to structure a classroom for young learners around that philosophy.
Yeah, it seems like to me that there's a lot of in the early elementary art. There's a lot of making the student, having the student kind of follow a very specific process, and then you get a lot of work that looks the same.
Yeah.
And it's but then when you let the kids kind of, I mean, I don't let them just do whatever, but like, let's say if we're looking at a pine branch, but then they can do any shape they want of the branch, or then they could do, there's like, I did one of the things that really worked out well for me is I did a landscape thing where I had them just do 3 bars, 3 rectangles. So it's kind of like this, imagine like a middle ground, foreground, background. And I just had them, first I said, okay, put down one, it was oil pastel. So it was like, put down any color on the top bar, put down any color in the middle, or I put down any color on the bottom. And then I had them now put down another color on any bar. So basically it was just mixing any colors at all.
Yeah.
And then the middle was always blue. So that became like the far space sky. And then we just put some trees in front of the sky. But they all end up looking different, and they're all like kind of exploring. And I think that's something I really like to do, this kind of finding ways for everyone to have something that really goes in a different way. But it's I guess, to put it again, it's like I'm always working at this, at how do you work out the assignment so that there is flexibility, but there's some constraints. But I think that's the thing that I'm always working with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something you were saying, which I was thinking about, was I was walking down the hallway in a school, and there's a sign that said, "Every child is an artist." And on the one hand, it's like, I guess that's a positive statement. It's supposed to, and it's good for kids to hear that. Maybe they wouldn't think of themselves that way. But it's funny because it's like every child's an artist, but is that implying that every adult is not an artist? Because then the children become adults,
right?
Because a lot of times with most adults, you say, "Oh, but I guess you're an artist, right?" Like, no, not me. I can't even draw a straight line. There's this kind of reticence where people are afraid. And then if you said, "Oh, but when you were a kid, you were an artist," you're like, no, even then, the people will kind of pull back. Say, I could never make art when I was. And so it's just, I think what I'm trying to point at is I think that's part of the reason why a lot of the, like the way that sometimes art classes are structured is it's not structured in that teaching for artistic behavior. As much, it's like it's teaching for follow these steps to create that product.
Right.
And instead of letting it be like kids exploring a little bit more, which is riskier. Yeah. And then the adults really don't know how to value it as much because they're they're not thinking of themselves as artists. So it's real. The truth is like every child is an artist and every adult is an artist.
Right.
It's just that most adults have sort of stopped exercising that muscle in their brain or soul or whatever it is.
Yeah. And it is a muscle. Like you have to exercise it. You have to practice the same way you would anything else. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting to think about it that way. And I do feel like that, the way we often teach and the way a lot of art teachers are kind of taught to teach is to create the end product with like step-by-step instructions, which is so like comfortable for kids to do and comfortable for even adults, like, go to the paint parties and follow the instructions and make something pretty.
Yeah.
But you're not exercising that muscle, that like creative muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's totally valid. Like it's fine to do that stuff and to have fun with it. And, I've like hosted some paint parties and gone to paint parties. It's fun. Like to not have to really turn on that really super creative part of your brain and just be told step by step.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a difference there in terms of what you're learning.
Yeah. I think it's another thing is we want to tell the children, you're an artist and don't be afraid to fail,
Yeah,
and try it and then you fail and then try. But I think that's part of the reason why we need the step-by-step thing is because when you get older, you tell the kid, well, if you fall down the bike, you'll just get back up and keep riding. But then when you're an adult, it's like, if I fall down the bike, that's not really an option. It's going to hurt too much.
Yeah.
And if I fall down trying to make this art, it's just too painful for me and I can't go there anymore. So I think that's why we tell the kids, it seems obvious, like, well, you got to fail, you have to fall and you got to get back up and keep trying. But then adults get to a point where they're unwilling to keep failing because in order to keep growing and actually any kind of an artist, you have to be in this constant state of like failing and failing better. Which is something like the Samuel Beckett quote, which you might know how that quote goes exactly. It's something like something like fail again, keep failing, and then that's it.
Right.
Something
just
like that.
Failing.
It's fail again, no matter, try again, something like that.
Yeah.
But essentially, fail better is the best we can hope for.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like if you don't try at all, there's no possibility that you might succeed.
Yeah.
So you have to, put it out there, keep trying. And there's going to be a lot of failure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also from the art teacher perspective. If, you have a successful lesson, if you get a bunch of kids that make something pretty nice that they can bring home. But if you open up the doors of like, let's see what happens a little bit, people are afraid, well, I can't have that kind of risk. What if, it doesn't work out and I have to kind of keep things safer. So I think that's part of people kind of just becoming afraid to take risks as like lesson planners.
Yeah, it almost requires redefining what is success as a teacher. Is it having your kids produce a product that we value as adults, like from our aesthetic viewpoint, or is it having the kids produce really intangible learning that you can't see and it's hard to document, it's hard to track, but they're really learning how to go through this difficult creative process.
Yeah, I think the first assignment I gave had to do with like making a scribble, doing a scribble. I think I played some music and then had some like scribbling to the tempo. And so I basically, you have a scribble and then I was like, okay, now let's look at the scribble and see if you can see something in the scribble and then complete the drawing like that. And it was kind of like, I can remember some of the things people said. It was like one kid, their idea is that the scribble looked like a walking wave. Like a wave in the ocean that had feet.
Yeah.
And there was these ideas that it was like, that's amazing. I've never even heard of such an idea. But if I look at the thing now, it just looks like a scribble.
Yeah.
But it was actually a very kind of creative, I called him out in front of the class, like how like the great of an idea that was. So that was, and it's hard to measure that. That was a great moment, though there isn't a product that I can like hang on the wall and say, look at this walking wave.
Yeah, but that is such a cool, like it's such great imagery.
Yeah.
He's almost writing poetry about the art.
Yeah.
I know you're in your first year. Would you have tips for other artists that are like thinking of diving into this?
I think what I heard, which I think holds true, is behavior management is huge.
Mm-hmm.
When I first, on that first day that I mentioned, I actually had an accordion in the classroom, and I was like dance around. And in my mind, I was thinking, I have to make this fun and entertain them. And, and I'm like setting the tone as like, like class is noisy and wild, and it's like, and as I've gotten through as I've taught more, you start to realize like the kids don't really need me to like get them to have fun. They're already going to find a way to have fun. But if I can provide some more structure, so, some of these kind of like behavior management, so that if I can just kind of corral their energy into the art. So I think that behavior management is the biggest thing, because if I have a kid's upset or they're fighting, kind of everything stops, or, you lose a lot of time that way if they're not lining up for the, if you have clear procedures and kind of rules of what happens, then you get more out of the class.
Right.
I guess there's a line where it can get a little bit too stuffy, and a little too rigid, where the kids are maybe afraid to be creative because of all the rules. But so I think that's a big thing, behavior management, but at the same time, I think is don't think that you can plan, have it all worked out. As soon as you get to the class, it's always this kind of moving target, moving scene that's happening, that you have to be constantly into this kind of spontaneous. It's like improv to me.
Yeah.
It's like you have to just you can't say, okay, cut or time out. You have to be there the whole time in this role. You're on stage as the teacher. And in some ways that's kind of good, because you can't make the perfect plan. You can make a good plan, but then always know that you have to, jump around and improvise. And I enjoy that because I'm not terribly good at planning.
Yeah. And like you said before, you adjust, you kind of, the first class might not be the best, and you kind of see what worked, what didn't work. And then the next one is better, and it gets better and better. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a nice thing, that you can constantly shift things around. Yeah. And like see what's working and what's not. Do you feel like that those things have held true with teaching online, or is this like, how are you managing that? Is it a whole other ballgame? It's fun. All these different schools do different things. I'm basically not teaching online. Okay. I am hopping into different classrooms on like these kind of Google Meet things, whatnot. I did give one mini lesson. It looks like I'm going to do another one soon. So I did do one mini lesson, but just a 10-minute thing where I went through a drawing, and then they kind of did the drawing with me, and they held things up to the screen. But for the most part, where I'm teaching, they're very concerned about not overwhelming the parents. Yeah. So though I am getting together the Google Classroom, and I'm starting to do more with like video editing and trying to put together these little videos, it remains to be seen how many people actually see that stuff. So yeah. And have there been any resources that have been really helpful with that? By resources, you mean? Yeah, like you mentioned Google Classroom that you're using. Is there anything else that you feel like has helped you that might help other teachers in terms of like any tools or online resources? Yeah, I basically, we've been doing the Google Classroom. That's useful. I have this, people use like the iMovie on their phone. Yeah. For some reason I found it awkward. I have this video editor thing on my phone called Splice. Okay. And I think it's like it used to be free, and now maybe it costs a couple dollars a month or something. So maybe I just find it easier to use because I had used it. Right. But I think that I find it to be a little bit more user friendly in terms of just like easily cutting things and together and whatnot. Right. Yeah, it's just such a funny time for the resources, but basically just doing not too much else. I don't have too much help. Yeah, I'm sort of, I'm a first year teacher in a first time pandemic thing, I guess. I'm still I'm a little figuring it out myself. Yeah. I think everybody's kind of in that. Even the teachers that have been teaching for decades are thrown into this totally new way of doing it. And it's strange to be like a first year teacher is a very specific kind of thing. And then, you know that everyone else knows what's going on and you don't ever know what's going on because you're just a first year. And now in this time, it's like, it's strange how it's leveled things. Yeah. Yeah, and nobody knows what's going on. Yeah, that's not comforting. No. Ugh. And I know we talked a bit about your artwork. Would you want to talk any more about your work and like the paintings that you've done in the past, or?
Yeah, I think that, well, one thing is that I'm so inspired by my students' work constantly, particularly like second grade. For me, once you get into like third grade is, here and there. Once you get fourth, fifth grade, it's like they already are too, they know what's good and bad or something like that. Like they're more constrained. It's something about when the early grades, the first and second grade, the work is very inventive in strange ways. And they make decisions which you would never have thought of.
Yeah.
And, and I'm constantly, inspired, and I'm constantly thinking, I'm going to take that idea and just make a big painting of that and I'll look great. But yeah, so I think that one thing is it's kind of, in some ways, kind of, I feel reinvigorated in terms of my own art, because I have constantly going into a room and seeing all this amazing art being made. Yeah. I think the metaphor for me sometimes as a teacher is, there's that kind of scene in Fantasia where Mickey has got to clean up the room or something, and she's got to use the magic to make the buckets and the mops go clean up the room. And that was kind of my first time teaching. I said, okay, everybody, it was like the first time ever teaching. I was like, everyone, paint that still life. And all of a sudden there's like 20 paintings coming into being at once. Like it was like magic. And it's sort of like, I think I've always been really kind of amazed by that. And it continues to be amazing how you go into a room and you say some stuff, and then all of a sudden there's all this art happening, and it just fills me with like, I'm excited. And I feel like I always leave a class or even a whole day teaching. I feel like I always kind of have more energy than I had when I went in, because it's so kind of exciting, all this stuff going on. So I think that that really connects to my art in that way. And I think my art has always been very interested in the art of children and folk art and kind of simple gestures, if you will. I know simple isn't really the right word, but so it connects in that way.
Yeah. I know you have 3 kids of your own. Have you done a lot of art with them? Yeah. And your wife's also an artist.
Yes. My wife, Megan Wynne, is artist, and she does a lot of actual photo work and takes pictures of the kids and does this kind of like photo / kind of performance art. And I am always behind the camera as well. So in a way, sometimes I don't think about it as my art, because I'm kind of like an art assistant, but I'm involved with that. And I think, you just, it's very casual with my kids. Like when we're drawing, it's kind of like, we'll just be drawing stuff and generally not to like do this assignment. But it's funny how I'll be doing an assignment, or I'll be planning an assignment, or my first grader, at home will see it, and then she'll do it. And so she'll jump in and sort of do assignments that I'm planning. And that's also very useful for a teacher to have this little kind of testing ground at home.
Yes. Oh, I have a 4-year-old, and I totally test out lessons with her.
Yeah, see if it's age appropriate.
Yep. And like, how much time does this take her? What steps did I forget that she's asking me about?
Yes, like, can their hands use these scissors to cut that paper? I'm like,
right.
That's sometimes the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Motor skills and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I use a lot of cardboard as well in my classroom. So then I'm like, okay, how much do I need to pre-cut? And at what age can they start being able to cut their own cardboard? Yeah,
that's one of the biggest things that you don't realize going into elementary is like the amount of prep, the amount of cutting up paper. And like in my case, there's like very little prep time. So like you'll come out on a Monday and there's like 5 minutes or something, and like cut 1,000 pieces of paper. So that's a big thing to be aware of. How you're going to manage your class prep time. Like, I've got a paper cutter at home, or you got to do that early in the morning.
Yeah. How have you kind of juggled all of that art making and parenting and teaching?
I think
all
I just
the prep.
like never take a break. That's like every spare second is like me cutting paper furiously at a paper cutter somewhere. But and I do have a paper cutter at home. So and I've been sometimes like week to week on a cart, like art on a cart at a school, and then kind of bring that cart between 2 schools. So then you're like, you don't want to like leave your glue sticks at one school. So a lot of times I'll always have this giant cart of stuff, wheeling it home, wheeling it from school to school, and always kind of finding a little time. It's funny how like when school was in session, it's just like 100% of the 24 hours in a day is like revolves around class and prepping for class And now in this time of school not being in session, it's just kind of a surreal kind of like drop of all that stuff that was happening. It's almost like I don't even remember who I was. So such a shocking change to not be doing all that prep work.
Right. Do you feel like it's given you more time now, or is it just a shift in what you're doing with that time? Because now you have 3 kids at home.
Yeah. That's one big thing is and then you have to worry about all these other kind of like safety issues. Whether you're in quarantine and then all these different kind of things you have to worry about, getting your food and washing all your food off or something. So there's all this, it seems like there's very little free time, but then there's also like learning how to do all this stuff online, which is kind of new. So that takes up a lot of time. So somehow it's weird that I end up somehow very busy all the time.
Yep. Oh, yeah. But I feel the same way. It is an interesting, because I hadn't really thought about that shift of I'm not prepping materials for like 1,400 kids anymore. Instead, I'm trying to figure out how to make videos and share them for those kids.
Yeah, like it was technically easier to be going to work all the time and prepping.
Right.
But I always say it's like, it's always easier to go to work than to like be at home with my children. It's always like, I always think, oh, it's like it's the weekend, but that's more work. Or if I go home, when I leave the school for the day, it's like I'm going home to take care of children. And those children don't listen to me as much.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of easier to not listen when it's your own parent, and
there's just
they love you and they're
but it's fun.
Yeah. Thinking more about your work and kind of your career as an artist, I know you've had some pretty big shows and you've been in New American Paintings a couple times. I wanted to hear about sort of how you seek out opportunities and just if there's any sort of advice you would give there.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think that happened to me is I was working at the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art in Virginia Beach, and I was like just doing a little art handling job. And then someone just kind of curious about my work, and they saw my work there, and then they gave me a little show. And then the curator there, Heather Hakimzadeh, she set up this other shows with me, or introduced me to someone who gave me a job at the Governor's School in Norfolk. So I think one thing is how little things, little connections roll into other things.
Yeah. In
terms of, it seems like, I guess the one reason, that's not really me seeking out opportunities, but so much opportunity has happened from that little kind of connection. Because in general, seeking out, I guess I'll you just do the usual. I'll be looking on the internet, just looking at the different institutions that might have opportunities. It seems like people have just told me about things, or you hear about things from word of mouth. Yeah. I guess that's, keeping in contact with other artists, other teachers, and checking your email. Being on mailing lists. But I'm definitely not the most savvy in terms of like seeking out opportunities and stuff like that. A lot of times they just seem to, the biggest things that I've achieved seems to like fall in my lap. So I've become kind of like lazy. I just like expect, I'll just wait for the next thing to fall in my lap. It'll be fine.
Right. Yeah. I feel like even if it does feel like they're kind of falling in your lap, there's something you've done. Like maybe it is some of those connections, or it's the things that you've applied to that are, that you've applied to online, that then people see your work somewhere and there's something that you've done to get your work in front of the right people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give yourself some credit.
Oh, yes. That's what you're trying to give me credit. Thank you. Yeah, I think just doing, I think somebody said, I think when I was in college, something like, if you're not doing your job unless you're getting like 5 rejection letters every year, or you need to think about it. You should be getting lots of rejections, which makes me think I should be applying to more things.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's part of the job. You got to keep putting yourself out there and then risking that rejection.
Right.
And keeping in mind that it leads to other things.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you can show your work or something and then like nothing really happens. And you think, what am I doing? And then you put all the money, you're putting in all the money into it and all that. And if you have kids, you're like, like what, what am I putting on the, could my children need milk?
Right. Yeah. Like, can I pay this $50 application fee, or should I spend that $50 on some food?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's not work.
Yeah.
Son, you got it. But, then if you add up all your Starbucks drinks in a month or something, just have a few less Starbucks and apply to a show.
Right. Yeah. And then the other thing that I have to remind myself of is even a rejection, it means somebody saw your work and maybe it wasn't good for that specific show, but maybe that curator is going to remember it and like call you up later.
Yeah. Yeah. Instagram has been something that's been nice, that I have work on there, and then every once in a while someone will kind of buy something from me. Little, I have like watercolors, like smaller things, but and other little things will happen from that, or even just people like talking about, or like connections. So I think that's another thing, is we don't have to do as much applying to that show where there's a few judges that judge you, but you can do, there's a lot more opportunities just like showing your work online and having a community of people that see it. And, it's a changing landscape in terms of last time I checked, it was all about the big art fairs, and the galleries seem to be kind of going out, and the art fairs are in, and I've been kind of out of it in terms of the big kind of what's going on in the fine art world. but things like Instagram have been interesting as a way to just see a lot of stuff. Yeah,
and connect with a lot of people in and out of the art world.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple little just kind of fun, like get to know you, wrapping up questions. What is something you're not so good at?
I would say I'm not very good at organization, like having a system where things go in a certain place and then putting them back. Like I always have, whether it's my studio, any place that's my area will become very messy, and then I have to like clean it up every once in a while, and then it just gets messy again.
Right.
Because I'll just say, well, I don't have to put this in the right spot now. And then it's kind of like a Francis Bacon studio kind of situation. Generally, it kind of devolves into that.
Yeah.
And then I have to, but at least I pat myself on the back by saying that I have the ability to clean it up.
Yes.
Periodically, which not everyone has that ability.
Right.
So I'd say basically a kind of undisciplined, disorganized kind of person. I'm not, I hope no one's listening to this that they're thinking about giving me a teaching job. I'll just keep my job.
But, what does your classroom look like?
Yeah. Sometimes I think I'm better on the cart, because then I don't have to deal with a whole room that could just become a big mess.
Yeah, you're kind of confined to the cart.
Yeah, I think that is something I have to, it's a challenge for me as a teacher, because there's a lot of planning, and then there's a lot of constant like emails. They want you to do this, do little thing, or like just fill that out, and I have trouble keeping track of all these kind of little things. But then I kind of make up, I guess, with my strong point. My strong points make up for that in the terms of like spontaneity and improv and coming up with things at the drop of a hat. And I can walk in. I used to teach at VCU, and I would almost just drive. I would drive 2-hour commute to teach there, and I would just basically plan my lesson on the drive there.
Right.
Probably I'd walk into class half knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And then, to give the homework, I would like go to the bathroom and then come back with a photocopy or something, And so I went for years at the college level. It was very, very, I would just be constantly improvising everything at the last minute. But on the one hand, that's not ideal to do that all the time. But it did give me this kind of skill set of being able to really kind of turn on a dime and react to a class, and be able to plan very kind of individually, make very little adjustments to help that specific class.
Right.
So I guess I'm kind of put a positive spin. I got this undisciplined or disorganized side, but then I had to really make up for that in other ways.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a habit you have to kind of force on yourself. If you're like, I feel like my nature is not super, super organized, but I have like habits that try to keep me organized.
Yeah. I'm hoping to have like no space in my house that is only mine. That like if my wife has to like be there, it's like I won't be able to wreak havoc. My plan.
Just kind of keeps you in line.
Yes. She's got the master plan.
Yeah. And then kind of the flip side, what is one of the best compliments you've gotten?
I don't know. I was thinking, something that came to my mind. I was thinking about that question. Like, it was like just about my first day of class, and I was kind of had this hallway duty, as a line of second graders walking by. Yeah. And this little kid was like, with the most enthusiastic sincerity, he was like, "You're the best." Aww. And I'd never seen the kid before in my life. And I think I said to him, like, "How do you know I'm the best?" Anyway, or something like, I was like, "We haven't even met." But, right. and it was a funny moment, but maybe in some way that points to the idea that when you're a teacher, there's you, the teacher, but then you're part of this greater body of teachers. So you're representing teachers. It's like maybe the kid's compliment, he was kind of maybe just speaking to the fact that, like, I'm a teacher, therefore I'm part of this kind of group of people who are, like, loved or something.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some depth in his silliness.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love how sweet the kids can be sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I get them wanting to come up and hug, or just being, making little, like, sweet little notes that's like, "I love art," or "best art teacher."
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
There's a lot of that. I've got some tiny little books that say that I'm loved. And yes. So and then sweet. There's the hallway hugging, which it's like, if you hug one kid, I've actually had one kid came to hug me, and then another, and then I had like 7 kids trying to hug me, and then 2 kids fell on the floor, and they were like crying, they got hurt, and like, okay, this is getting out of hand. You got to be careful not to, like, give one kid a high five, and then it's just like a snowball.
They mob you.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
And fun, silly question. What's your go-to order at your favorite restaurant?
That's a tough question. But I was going to say, if you go down to the Lower East Side in Manhattan and you go to Shopson's General Store, it is a restaurant that I would get a bowl of chili, because they probably wouldn't make me pay. So it was like something I can order that would very little work. They just had to scoop something in a bowl. And then I wouldn't feel guilty that they gave it to me for free, because I used to work there.
Oh, nice.
So that's my go-to meal.
Yeah.
Go anywhere.
Kind of filling and and free.
That's right.
Nice. Is there anybody that you would want to thank or give, like, a shout out to?
I think my wife, Megan Wynne, would be the person I should give the shout out to the most, because I think everything that I have, like, accomplished or done is in some way thanks to her, or her support, and help in various ways. Teaching, because I mean, she's she's great in many ways, and somebody who's always there to keep me on, give me some very good advice and support.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very, very helpful in this career that we've chosen.
Yes.
Yeah. And where can listeners connect with you online?
My Instagram is just like @BladeWynne as the Instagram account. And I was putting my art on there for a while, and then the last several posts have just been me posting selections of work from various assignments that I've been teaching. So, and maybe I should start doing that thing where you kind of split the two into different areas. So, but I could be contacted through that Instagram.
Cool.
And check out there's art and some of the student art as well.
Yeah, I haven't split it up either. I'm like, it's too much to manage. Yeah. Just like stick it all in one place.
Yeah.
But maybe that is good advice, to kind of have your personal artwork and your teaching sort of a little bit separate.
Yeah. Start feeling like if I only post student art and then if I start posting my art, it looks the same, and then people won't know it's what. Then I'll have to write captions and things.
Yeah. Like, which one's mine and which one's...
Then they'll see I'm stealing all my students' art ideas from them.
Right. Oh, I love it. Well, is there anything else you would want to share before we...
Something I was thinking about is that, I was thinking about the question of, you were mentioning the kind of like any questions haven't been asked. It's something I was thinking about. If someone asked me just like, what is art? I would be like, that would be hard for us to answer that question. Or what is art for? Like, why are we teaching art? What is it for? And it'd be hard. It's funny that it's such a slippery question to answer. And I feel like we know it instinctually in our bones somehow, that we know why, but it would be hard to explain it. It would be hard to say it. And it would probably be hard to make an argument to the superintendent for this or that. And they have arguments. And sometimes, art is in the service of other things. Sometimes you'll say like, well, studies show that if you, do art, then you'll be better at math later. And sometimes there's, and you think, is art for, in some ways it's for the whole person. But anyway, I thought that's kind of, sometimes those kind of questions that I don't have a good answer for. So I'm glad you didn't ask that question. But, but those questions, I think someday I'll get around to thinking about them more.
Yeah. And like, I almost feel like it would help to write down, and I wouldn't be able to write it in like sentences. It would have to be almost like some kind of mind map, just like words and circles connecting them and arrows, and it would be visual.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
A tough one. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. It was nice to hear more about your teaching and your artwork.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for interviewing me. It's been a treat.
I love how Blade has adjusted his own art practice to fit into his life as a busy first-year teacher and parent of 3 young kids. He's growing trees in pots as an art form, as objects to draw or paint from, as sculpture, as a practice that feeds creativity. I can't help but relate his plants to his students. He spoke about how he gives a little water and helps shape the plants, and the plants continue to grow for years. It makes him think about longevity and a brighter future. Children bring me to those hopeful thoughts.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can reach me at Teaching Artist Podcast on Instagram or teachingartistpodcast@gmail.com. Who do you want to hear from? Please share your recommendations of teaching artists. And if you loved this episode, please subscribe, leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow me. It really makes a big difference. Thank you.